Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna and I'm a psychologist specialized in emotional and binge eating. And today I want to discuss with you every step that I have took over the course of 20 years in order to get out of the restrict binge cycle. And when I say 20 years, I mean it. Like I went on my first diet at the age of 11, or at least I was cutting food groups. And it's not just before shy of my 30th birthday that I healed, and I have been healed for over 10 years, 11 years now. So when you enter in the cycle of I want to lose weight, I'm not necessarily saying that everyone will end up with a distorted relationship with food and their body, but whoever has an experience of an eating disorder or any type of distorted relationship with food has been on a diet. And I unfortunately fall into that second category. So I was restricting severely for a very long time, but at the same time I was binging. And that's why you could not see clearly on my body that there was an issue. But I had behaviors of distorted eating for a very long time, whether it was restricting or binging. And my body just didn't reflect as much. And I was obviously praised when my weight went lower and a bit criticized when my weight went up, which was fine. But I would say that it was my job and my duty, because I didn't have the adequate help, together with my therapist and all the study that I've done, to heal my own relationship with food. And here are some of the things that I absolutely had to do on a day-to-day basis in order to heal fully. As I said, I've been healed for over 12 years. I've had 2 kids in the last 12 years, and my weight hasn't been going up and down that much at all. It's like in a normal range, what you would expect. I would say the first thing was to acknowledge that dieting led me to this problem. And so it's a complicated thing to admit, because dieting was my source of comfort and pleasure and something that I was able to control really well when I was dieting. And then I would have my cheat days and I would be like, it's fine because I know I need to go back to dieting, so it's not an issue. So admit that dieting is not working, admit that I'm fat phobic, admit that I am obsessed with weight loss, admit that I'm feeling out of control or obsessed around food, and that overall I have a poor relationship with food. Like, the first step is actually awareness, because I could have found, even back then, loads of articles that I was doing everything right, like not eating or cutting food groups or exercising too much or whatever I was doing at the time. I could find online proof that I am on the right path, although it was completely distorted. So first of all, the understanding that everything that I have done has led to more issues and more distorted relationship with food. Number 2, I dissected my issues. One was exercise, body, mind, and I would say the day-to-day life. In my day-to-day life, I ditched the scale because it was a massive trigger for restricting or binging, and it was kind of making me eat more or less depending on what the number has, shown that morning. So I ditched the scale. I decided to not look myself too much in the mirror, like dissect my body, what I like and what I don't like. I was more focused on how I feel. I didn't want to hold on to old clothes where I was at my thinnest, but still with massive bad body image days. So I just kind of donated, got rid of them. And it's not to say that you don't have to aspire to have, a thinner body, if that's your thing. But in my case, a thinner body didn't mean that I was happier, because it was never thin enough. So that's how I knew it was very distorted, right? I can look at my old photos and be like, why did I want to lose weight then? But because of a distorted relationship with food and my body, I was never thin enough. So I would say that these are some of the things: the clothes, the mirror, and the scale. That was like my daily thing that I got rid of and pushed on the side. When it comes to food and the understanding that dieting doesn't really work, I had to go back to basics. And basics, I mean really basics, because I didn't know what I like to even eat. So it was a bit of a trial and error, but I decided to have 3 meals and a snack, And then it was experimenting. Do I actually like an omelet, or was I forced to have it because I was on a diet? Or do I like protein shakes, or do I like oatmeal, or whatever it was? I just decided to make the meal, make the picture, but also assess, how do I feel eating this? Because when I was on a diet, I never assessed my hunger cues, I never assessed my satiety cues, and I never assessed whether or not I liked that particular food. So now, when I had the opportunity to do so, I was like, I actually don't like oatmeal only with berries. I need peanut butter. Or I like my, eggs not only with mushrooms, but also with cheese. It was this kind of a combination. But with that, with having regular meals, not cutting food groups, not cutting calories, I was only focused on hunger cues, satiety cues, and satisfaction. Obviously nourishment as well. But what does that mean? That means that I eat when I'm physically hungry and I stop when I'm full. I assess whether or not these foods are something that I enjoy, or I'm just eating for the sake of eating, and then I'm like, no, I don't need it now. And then if I want something which I would say was the bad food, the unhealthy processed foods, in the beginning I was very fearful of introducing those foods, so I took them as part of the meals. So for example, I would put croutons on a salad or cheese on top of a salad instead of eating it as a snack, because that petrified me. Or I would have, first of all, rye bread, and then I had some different types of bread, or tortillas. Or if I wanted something sweet, I would have it right after a meal instead of having it as a snack, because that was still a reminder that you're doing something really bad. Over time, I got over it when I noticed that nothing drastically was happening with my body when I introduced things like sweets and stuff like that. But I think in the beginning they were part of my daily meals. No fasting, no rules around portions or type of foods or timings. So full flexibility to explore, because all these food rules and timings and portions really messed up my hunger and satiety cues. So it would happen that when I was fasting, for example, I was pushing away my hunger cues, obviously, but I was also hiding behind fasting, and I was like, how much can I go to not eat? So I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. For me, it was a distorted relationship with food that made me fast longer and longer and longer. But I was saying that I'm doing it for autophagy and cell renewal and brain cognition. So it's very easy to hide a very distorted relationship with food when you have that particular problem, and use very popular trends to hide behind them. So I stopped fasting. And I was just saying, it's probably obvious to everyone that we all know when we are hungry and when we're not, and what we would like to eat. I just got lost along the way from all the dieting and the food rules and just all the information out there that was telling you what to eat and how much to eat. So the daily stuff, the food, and then came, I would say, something which is more in-depth work. The mindset work. And part of the mindset work was introducing fear foods bit by bit, but also the understanding of, why do I have such an obsession with food in the first place? Why do I have the urge to binge? Or why do I have the urge to be thin? Or what triggers me? What emotions that I'm trying to hide or suppress, or I just don't want to feel? That's something that I have never thought about. I never considered myself as an emotional eater, although I was very much eating when I was emotional. But in my mind, I explained that by being addicted to food, or that I love food too much, or that I was not motivated to lose weight at that moment, or that I lacked discipline or willpower. But in fact, I was eating for the reasons which were not hunger, obviously, but I didn't want to dig deep and to understand, why am I eating then? And that requires a little bit more work. It requires a little bit more honesty with yourself, to tell, your own self that you're eating because you want to feel loved, you want to be, felt cared for, you are lonely, you're bored, you're stressed, you're anxious, you don't feel validated, justified, whatever it is, or just because you have some habits that you have acquired as a child. It all is a possibility why you could eat. We put it under this umbrella of emotional eating, but when you get a little bit deeper into that, you might understand a little bit more that some of the reasons why you binge eat comes from certain traumas, potentially habits, coping mechanisms that you have learned as a child and you just brought them into adulthood without questioning it, like, is this really serving me or not? So for me, that did require that if I assess that I'm not physically hungry, I had to be honest with myself and just stop and be like, okay, what's going on? Why do you want to eat right now? Like, what is it that you cannot handle? Because technically you can handle anything and all the emotions will pass through you and they will be gone. It's just in that particular moment, you feel like you cannot handle it and that you need to eat to distract yourself, to numb yourself, to get the high from the food, the pleasure, even though you will feel like crap the moment it's gone, like the moment you have finished your meal, your extra snacks or whatever. So it is important to have that conversation. And then once it becomes a habit for you to ask that question, what am I actually feeling or what triggered me, you will be more prone to either work on those triggers and work on those emotions rather than numb them, because you see the end of the tunnel. That one time I tried to assess my emotions, I managed and I didn't eat. Wow, that's a good feeling. And then the second time and the third time and the fourth time. And here's what happens. All these calories that normally you would have eaten while you were feeling whatever you were feeling, now you're not eating them. Those extra calories are not consumed. So for me, like for my clients and other people I have spoken to, that's when the weight loss comes a little bit easier, because you're not depriving yourself because you were never hungry in the first place. You're just putting aside the food as a coping mechanism and you're trying to find the new ways how to cope with some unpleasant feelings that you might have. So these are my tips. I can go over them in a more extensive video if you want to. You can comment down below. But in a nutshell, daily tasks, food, and mindset are the three components that come together if you want to heal your relationship with food and get out of the restrict binge cycle.